Hey guys, how's it going? So right now I'll be doing an updated review on the Razer Blade 16. This is the 2024 model with the 14900HX, that's the i9 by Intel. It's the last of the Raptor Lake series before they move over into all Core Ultra type of laptops, which is what I think they're going to be doing going forward. So this is the end of an era when it comes to Intel. It's the same RTX 4080 that we got last year. It seems like so far in 2024 we're not getting an upgrade on the GPU front, which is a bit disappointing but not so bad. Unfortunately, as of right now, there really hasn't been much games that's really pushing the envelopes in terms of graphical fidelity. These gaming laptops that came out last year and even 2 years ago can still run any single game comfortably right now. Would have been nice to get some new chips, but it's just not looking like it. And also new for this year, this has a 16-inch OLED 240Hz panel with G-Sync. So that is an industry first. I've already done a first look on this laptop. I'll leave a link down in the description below. This is just kind of more along the lines of an update. Alright guys, so I'm also going to have links to buy in the description from both Amazon and Best Buy. Alright, thanks. So I just want to jump straight into the performance. I covered that a lot in the first look, so I'll just throw some charts on screen so you can kind of get an idea for how this Razer Blade 16 performs and how it compares to last year, etc. And now that I have the MSI Titan 18HX, you can see how a thin and light, well, I guess relatively speaking, thin and light gaming laptop compares to this behemoth. And so feel free to pause this video. Since I already did a deeper dive on the first video, I'm just going to kind of breeze through these. So in some games it's about the same, and in some games the Titan pulls ahead. So based off of what we're seeing here, if performance is at the most paramount to you, then you might need to wait for that new Razer Blade 18 whenever that comes out, and that's supposed to have Thunderbolt 5 too, so I'm actually really excited about checking that one out. So there is one thing I noticed about the Razer Blade 16, and that the total TGP only goes up to around 205 watts, and I try to push this thing as high as I possibly can, and for what I'm realizing, the Intel Core i9 14900HX needs a lot of power just to run properly. Minimum of 45 watts. I've noticed some stutter in regular applications, even desktop use, when it's running at 30 watts. So when you're gaming, the CPU is always going to be at 45 to 55. So that only leaves around like 150, 155 watts to the GPU. And in most cases, I'm never seeing the Razer Blade 16 get to its advertised 175 watt TGP. But overall, based off of the performance I'm seeing, you're not losing too much of it compared to the bigger guys out there, so I wouldn't lose too much sleep over it. But I think one of the main reasons why the Razer Blade doesn't want to go over 205 watts is because of those temps, both the surface and the internal. Man, they're getting really high. The GPU is hovering around 83 degrees Celsius, and that starts to throttle around 86, so that's a little bit too high. And on the CPU, it's always around 90, 95 when I'm stressing out the system, like playing games or editing videos, doing work in Lightroom, etc. The temps are high on this. I will say though that this laptop gets really, really hot. Like I can't put my hand on the bottom chassis for more than just a few seconds without needing to take it off. It is incredibly hot. Hot to probably cause some injuries. That's one thing about this entire laptop, and that's kind of why I've been turned away from it, because I can't video edit or game on my lap with this particular device. It just gets way too hot. So I am less inclined to call this a laptop than, but it's more along the lines of a small portable desktop, because you will be putting this on top of a desk. So if that's something that's important to you, then you might want to stay clear of this particular Razer Blade 16. So you can control the temperatures a little bit at the expense of some performance using the different performance profiles in Synapse. There's a custom mode where you can adjust the amount of performance going to the CPU and GPU. I haven't really found that it's making much of a difference though in pretty much everything I've been testing. And there's also a max fan, which didn't really seem to make much of a difference. It helped both the CPU and the GPU's temperatures reduce by 2 to 3 degrees, which is fairly significant, but it didn't do anything to performance. And it's the same when you switch to turbo mode. I got pretty much identical scores and just about everything I tested in custom. But when you switch down to balance, you start to take a little bit of a performance hit, and the fan speed goes down a lot too. But then the caveat with that is the GPU is only maxing out at 110 watts. And remember, the CPU needs to be around 45 to 55 watts to run optimally. So the total TGP is now limited to 158 watts. Once you go into silent mode, you're limited to only 80 watts, and that brings the entire package down to 130 watts. And speaking of the silent mode, even when you're not gaming, even when the laptop is just in idle, it's never actually silent. So, I mean, that's something that's a bit of a bummer to me, and also something to keep in mind. But overall, though, these controls are great, and I can imagine those who care about temperatures and fan noise will want to cycle between these different settings depending on the task at hand. So the next thing I want to talk about is the display, and I've got a lot of questions asking if I prefer this mini LED versus the OLED. So I don't have that mini LED anymore, so I can't have them side by side, but I do have my new Titan 18, and that does have a mini LED, and that measures very well. So the best I could do is just compare them, and then also just using my memory from the other mini LED panels I've used. I would say overall that the OLED is generally better. It looks sharper, it looks cleaner, even though it's a QHD panel. I think a lot of that has to do with the glossy panel. That just usually brings out more detail in panels. And the perceived contrast is better, the perceived color, you get better gradients, etc. And also, with mini LED, you get blooming, which can sometimes be a bit distracting. You're looking at a mini LED panel versus this OLED panel just being clean. Everything just looks the way it should. If something's supposed to be bright, it's bright. If something's supposed to be dark, it's dark. You're not depending on an algorithm where thousands of mini LEDs are controlling what you visually see on the screen. But I will say where the mini LED starts to pull ahead, and this is actually a really big deal, is in the overall brightness, and especially in HDR. HDR just tends to pop a lot more on mini LED. When I measured the screen, I was only able to get like around 451 nits versus on every other mini LED panel I've tested. Sometimes when you're not in HDR mode, you're getting 800 nits, and when you're in HDR mode, you're getting over 1,000 nits on each of them. But I will say though, from all the screens I've seen with only like 1,000 dimming zones, that's not really enough to encapsulate an entire scene in HDR. So that's where OLED really shines. I'm aware that the new ROG Scar 16 has 2,000 mini LED zones now, so I'm really interested in checking that out. I do plan on ordering one of those as soon as I'm able to, and I would love to do a review on that to see how that compares against OLED screens. But overall, we're at the point right now where even if you choose mini LED or OLED, for the most part, I would say that you'd be happy with either one that you choose. I can imagine a lot of people preferring OLED just because of the cleaner panel, and you're not getting, again, those weird anomalies from the mini LED panel. For some people, including me sometimes, a bad mini LED panel can be very, very distracting. And I know a lot of people say with the ROG laptops, you can just turn it into single zone, but that completely defeats the purpose of a mini LED panel. And if it's done well, you should need to turn it on and off. Alright, so this won't be a Razer video unless I tackle the build and the design, which I've done numerous times on several other videos. So I'll just make it quick for some of my newer viewers. Well, welcome first of all, but the Razer is typically the best built Windows laptop out there, usually by a long shot. In 2024, we're expected to see some better competition out there. For example, like the Asus G14 and G16, the 2024 model, and maybe some other ones out there. But the Razer just looks clean and solid, and it's really well built. The keyboard is on the shallow side in terms of typing, but if you're used to many other laptops like a Dell XPS or a MacBook, then you'll be right at home for this. I usually tend to prefer keyboards with a little bit more travel. The trackpad is large, gigantic, and it's one of the best ones out there. So So one thing I really like about Razer is their RGB profile that they have for a lot of their games. So as you can see here, I didn't customize this. Razer Synapse already has a profile that the developer made for this game, and as you can see, it's dynamic. So in different situations, it changes to different colors. So like when you're playing Overwatch, depending on the different action that's performing on screen, it'll change in relation to that. And it's just like a really cool feature that Razer offers that other laptop brands don't have. But other than that, if you like this video, like it. If you want to see more of this kind of stuff, subscribe. And down below, I'm going to have links for this laptop on Amazon and on Best Buy. Alright, but with that being said, alright guys, thanks a lot. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.